Wonderful. That's what I told my daughter-in-law, Chloe, when she announced that 40 of her closest friends and family were coming to my home for her and my son's 10th anniversary party. I'm going to a spa. You can handle the cooking and the cleaning. I'm not your caterer. Her face went ashen, like she'd just seen a ghost. But what she didn't realize was that the real surprise was yet to come. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to follow my channel, because I share a new one every single day. My name is Helen. I'm 68 years old, and for the last 7 years, I've been treated like the hired help in my own house. It all began when my son David married that woman. From day one, Chloe decided I was her personal event planner. Helen, I need you to whip up some appetizers. Helen, this place is a mess. Helen, can you make your famous lemon cake for my book club? And I, like an idiot, always did it. I convinced myself it was the price of keeping my family close, but I had finally reached my breaking point. That Monday in May, Chloe breezed into my sunroom, as she always did, without so much as a knock, carrying that oversized designer handbag I knew for a fact David couldn't afford. She was wearing a silk blouse that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Her stilettos clicked on my terracotta tiles, each click a tiny tap on my last nerve. Helen? She cooed in that saccharine tone she used when she wanted something. I have the most fabulous news. We're going to host our 10th anniversary party right here. It'll only be about 40 people. Only 40 people. As if that was a small gathering. As if I were a full-service catering company with an industrial kitchen. I could see the scheming glint in her eyes as she laid out her grand vision. She settled into one of my wicker chairs, crossed her legs, and started listing her demands. I've already told my father, Richard, and my brother Mark. My sister Sarah is flying in from Boston. It's going to be the party of the year. She paused for effect, expecting me to start frantically taking notes. And of course, you'll handle all the food and arrangements, right? The canapes, the main course, the desserts. Her words felt like a series of small, sharp pokes. I thought of all the birthday parties I'd catered for her friends while she mingled and took all the credit. All the holiday dinners I'd cleaned up after while she slept in until 11 a.m. All the times I had been made to feel like a background character in the story of my own life. We'll need at least 4 different kinds of hors d'oeuvres, she went on, oblivious to my stony silence. And that seafood paella you make, everyone loves that. Oh, and you'll need to arrange the flowers for the centerpieces. I want everything to look absolutely perfect for the photos my father will see. She waited for my usual reply. Of course, dear. But this time was different. This time a line had been crossed. I looked her straight in the eye, a sense of calm washing over me that was as surprising to me as it would be to her. Wonderful, I said again, watching her perfect smile start to twitch at the edges. It will be a wonderful party for you all because I won't be here. The silence that fell over the sunroom was thick and heavy. Chloe blinked a few times, as if her brain was struggling to process my words. Her perfectly glossed lips parted, but nothing came out. What do you mean you won't be here? She finally stammered, her voice a little shaky. She sat up straighter, her relaxed posture suddenly rigid. Exactly what I said. I'm going on a trip, a little spa retreat. You and David can manage the party. I'm not your employee. I watched as the blood drained from her face. Her hands, which were resting on her designer bag, started to tremble. For the first time in 7 years, Chloe was at a complete loss for words. But Helen, she sputtered, I've already told everyone. The invitations are being sent out. It's all arranged. Of course you can't do this, she insisted. Yes, I can. It's my house. Those 4 words hung in the air like a death sentence for her plans. Chloe's jaw went slack, her expression shifting from disbelief to pure outrage. She sprang up from the chair, her heels clicking angrily now. This is absolutely absurd. David will never stand for this. David can feel however he wants, but my decision is made. For the first time, I was the one in control. But what she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that this wasn't a snap decision. I had been planning this for 6 months, and I had reasons that would soon leave them both utterly speechless. Chloe's face contorted with fury, her cheeks flushed a deep red, and her eyes narrowed into angry slits. She took a step towards me, trying to use her height to intimidate me as she always did. You know what, Helen? I always knew you were a selfish person, but this is a new low. Her voice was laced with poison, every word a deliberate sting. My family is coming from all over the country, and you're going to sabotage our anniversary over some petty whim? A whim? 7 years of being taken for granted, of being treated like an unpaid servant, and she dared to call my decision a whim. I felt a surge of hot anger, but I pushed it down, keeping my composure. I had learned to master my emotions after years of being her doormat. That's not my concern, I replied, my calmness unsettling her even more. You should have asked me before you planned a 40-person party in my home. Our home, she shrieked, her mask of sophistication shattering completely. David is your son. This house is practically his already. And there it was, the ugly truth that had always lingered beneath the surface. Chloe didn't see me as family. She saw me as a temporary caretaker of her future inheritance. She was just waiting for me to be out of the picture so she could take over everything I had spent a lifetime building. An interesting way to put it, I murmured, watching her eyes widen with panic as she realized her mistake. Very interesting. Just then, I heard David's car pull into the driveway. Chloe dashed out of the sunroom, her heels clicking a frantic rhythm on the floor. David, your mother has lost her mind, I heard her cry out. She's refusing to help with the party. She says she's going on vacation and leaving us to handle everything alone. I could hear their muffled voices from the entryway. Chloe's tone was high-pitched and frantic. David's was low and placating. A few moments later, they walked into the sunroom together. My son looked tired, his tie loosened after a long day at his finance job. Behind him, Chloe stood with her arms crossed, a smug look on her face. She was clearly expecting him to reprimand me and fix her problem. Mom, David began, using the patient but firm tone he'd adopted since marrying her. Chloe told me what's going on. Don't you think you're overreacting a little? Overreacting? My own child was calling me dramatic for refusing to be his wife's personal caterer. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. The disappointment that had been simmering for years finally hardened into resolve. No, David, I'm not overreacting. I'm being clear. But Mom, it's our 10th anniversary. It's a special occasion. Chloe already invited everyone. We can't just cancel it. I never said you should cancel. I said I won't be here. Chloe stepped forward, positioning herself between David and me. See? She's being completely unreasonable. What will my father think? What am I supposed to tell him? How about the truth? I replied calmly. That you assumed I would be your free event staff without even asking me, and you were wrong. David let out a heavy sigh, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of pure frustration. Mom, be realistic. You know Chloe can't organize a party for 40 people by herself. And why is that? I asked. I've done it for her dozens of times. It's time she learned. But I have my career, Chloe protested. I can't just take a week off to cook and decorate. Her career, a struggling online boutique that, from what I could tell, cost more to run than it ever made. But of course, her career was more important than my time, my energy, and my peace of mind. Then hire a party planner, I suggested with a sweet smile. I hear there are some excellent ones in the city. Planners cost a fortune, Mom, David exclaimed. Why would we spend thousands of dollars when you can just... He stopped himself, catching the words before they could tumble out. When I can just do it for free, I finished for him. Like I always do. Like the good little helper you both expect me to be. A thick silence filled the room. Chloe and David exchanged worried glances. I could practically see the gears turning in their heads as they tried to figure out a new angle to manipulate me. Look, Mom, David said, his voice softening. I know we haven't been as appreciative as we should be. Maybe you're just feeling a bit stressed. Stressed? I couldn't believe it. He was dismissing 7 years of disrespect as a momentary mood swing. The anger I'd been suppressing started to bubble to the surface, but I kept my voice even. This has nothing to do with stress, David. This is about respect, a concept that you and your wife seem to have forgotten. That's not fair, Chloe interjected. We've always treated you like family. The part of the family that serves the food and washes the dishes while you two entertain. The part that's never asked for an opinion but is always expected to comply. David moved closer and placed a hand on my arm, the way he used to when he was a little boy and wanted a cookie before dinner. But he wasn't a little boy anymore. He was a grown man who had consistently chosen his wife's demands over his mother's well-being for 7 long years. Okay, Mom, I get that you're upset, but just think about it. It's one party. After it's over, everything will go back to normal. Normal. They're normal, where I was invisible until they needed something. Where my feelings were irrelevant as long as their lives were convenient. Where my home was no longer a place of peace, but their personal event space. No, David. Things aren't going back to normal, because I'm leaving the day after tomorrow. They both froze. Chloe was the first to find her voice, which had risen several octaves. The day after tomorrow? The day after tomorrow, I confirmed, savoring the look of pure panic that was dawning on their faces. My bags are practically packed. What they didn't know was that my bags really were packed, just not for the destination they imagined. This is insane! Chloe shrieked, pacing the sunroom like a trapped animal. You can't leave then. It's impossible. My father arrives in 3 days. Well, perhaps you should have considered that before you volunteered my services without my consent, I replied, maintaining my calm as I began to water my ferns. Every small, deliberate action was designed to show them that their hysterics had no effect on me. David just stood there, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, completely lost. He looked back and forth between us as if hoping one of us would just give in and end the confrontation. Mom, please, he finally mumbled. Just tell us where you're going. When are you coming back? I'm going to visit an old friend in Oregon, I lied without blinking, and I'll be back in 2 weeks. The lie felt surprisingly natural. It was essential. They couldn't know my real plan. Not yet. 2 weeks? Chloe sounded like she was choking. But what are we supposed to do? I already told my father you were making your paella. He loves your paella. My sister Sarah is flying in from Boston. Mark took time off from his firm. Those sound like their problems, not mine. I saw the fury on Chloe's face begin to curdle into desperation. Her perfectly manicured fingers gripped the back of a chair, her knuckles turning white. Helen. Her voice suddenly shifted, becoming cloying and manipulative. You know, I've always looked at you as a mother figure. You mean so much to us. You can't just abandon us like this. There it was, the tactical shift from anger to guilt-tripping. I had seen her use this maneuver countless times, but its power over me was gone. If you truly saw me as a mother, you wouldn't treat me like your staff. But I don't treat you like staff. I thought you enjoyed helping out. I thought you liked making things nice for the family. Making things nice. For 7 years, I had believed that making things nice was how I could maintain peace, how I could hold on to my place in my son's new life. But now I realized that making things nice had just made me a ghost in my own home. You know what, Chloe? You're right. I do like making things nice, which is why I'm going to do something nice for myself for a change. David stepped in again, his patience clearly wearing thin. Mom, this isn't fair. You know we don't have the money to hire caterers for 40 people. The down payment on the new condo took all our savings. A new condo? This was the first I was hearing about any new condo. My mind sharpened as I processed this new piece of the puzzle. When were they planning on moving? And why was I the last to know? What new condo? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Chloe and David shared a guilty look, the kind of look that screams, "You weren't supposed to know that yet." Well, David stammered, looking at his feet, we were going to tell you after the party. We found this amazing place over in the marina. 2 bedrooms, a balcony with a view, a pool. Sounds expensive, I remarked, keeping my voice level, though my thoughts were racing. Well, yeah, but we think it's a good investment. And don't worry, it's only 20 minutes away. 20 minutes. Close enough for them to still drop by whenever they needed something, but far enough for them to have their own space. How very convenient. And how are you planning to afford it? I asked, already suspecting I knew the answer. Chloe's face suddenly brightened, as if she'd just found the perfect way to solve everyone's problems. That's why this party is so important. My father is always so generous when he's impressed, and my brother Mark has connections with investors. If the party goes perfectly, they might help us with the down payment for the condo and invest in David's new business idea. And there it was. The real reason for the lavish party. It wasn't about celebrating a marriage. It was about putting on a show for her wealthy family to squeeze money out of them. And I was supposed to be the unpaid director, stagehand, and caterer for their little production. I see, I murmured, letting the silence stretch as they both waited for my reaction. So you need this party to be perfect to get money from your family. Exactly, Chloe exclaimed, visibly relieved that I was finally understanding. I knew you'd get it, Helen. You're so sharp. You always know what needs to be done. What needs to be done? For 7 years, what needed to be done was for me to set aside my own comfort, my own time, and my own needs to make their lives run smoothly. But I had a very different idea now of what needed to be done. You're right, Chloe. I know exactly what needs to be done. And that's why my decision stands. I'm leaving the day after tomorrow. The hope drained from their faces. Chloe started breathing quickly, looking like she was on the verge of a full-blown meltdown. You can't do this. You can't ruin our future because you're in a bad mood. It's not a bad mood. It's a final decision. But what will my family think when they get here and there's no party set up? What will they think when there's no food? They will think their daughter invited them to a party she was incapable of hosting, and they will be right. David stepped closer, his desperation radiating off him. Mom, please, if you really need a break, we can postpone it. After the party, you can go anywhere you want. We'll pay for the whole trip, the hotel, everything. They would pay for my trip. With what money? Hadn't they just said the condo down payment left them with no savings? It didn't matter. The offer was 7 years too late. The offer is tempting, David, but my decision is made. This is emotional blackmail, Chloe accused, her mask of civility finally crumbling away. You're using our situation to punish us. Emotional blackmail. The words hung in the air, a perfect, unintentional confession. Because if my refusal to be their free labor was emotional blackmail, what had they been doing to me for 7 years? You want to talk about emotional blackmail, Chloe? It's making me feel guilty for not wanting to bake for your friends on a Tuesday. It's telling me a good mother-in-law always helps out when I say I'm too tired to host another one of your dinner parties. It's assuming my time has no value because I'm retired and must have nothing better to do. Every word was a direct hit. I saw them both flinch because they knew it was all true. That's not the same, Chloe stammered, her voice losing its conviction. You're right. It's not the same. What you two have done is far worse. You have exploited my love for my son and my desire for a peaceful family. The sunroom fell silent again. I could hear the gentle hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen, Chloe's shallow breathing. But the loudest sound was the ticking of the clock, counting down the seconds to my liberation. Because the day after tomorrow, everything was going to change. And they had no idea how much. That night, while Chloe and David were in the living room having a tense, whispered argument, I went to my study and opened my laptop. It was time to initiate the final phase of my plan. A plan that had been forming for 6 months, ever since I discovered something that completely shattered my perception of my dear daughter-in-law. 6 months ago, while looking for an old photo album in the guest room closet, a box had tumbled off the top shelf. It was filled with papers Chloe had obviously hidden. Bank statements, credit card bills, and threatening letters from collection agencies. At first, I was just confused. But as I read through them, a sick feeling grew in the pit of my stomach. That night, after they were asleep, I went through every single document. What I uncovered was devastating. Chloe was drowning in debt, over $60,000. She had maxed out secret credit cards, taken out high-interest personal loans, and had a history of compulsive spending on luxury goods for her failed online boutique. But that wasn't the worst of it. The worst part was a series of printed emails between Chloe and her sister, Sarah. They discussed how to manage David so he wouldn't find out about the debt, how to keep him believing her business was about to take off, and, most horrifyingly, a detailed plan to convince him to sell my house to free up capital for their future. My house, the home I had shared with my late husband for 40 years, the place where I raised my son, the one major asset I had left in the world. Chloe wanted David to sell it to pay off her secret shopping debts. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I just sat in the dark, overwhelmed by the betrayal and the deceit. But as the sun rose, the grief began to morph into something else. A cold, hard resolve to protect myself and everything I had worked for. The very next day, I began my counteroffensive. I hired a private financial investigator, a discreet professional my lawyer had recommended. I asked him to do a deep dive into all of Chloe's finances. The report he delivered a few weeks later was even more shocking than what I had found. Not only was she a compulsive spender, but she had been systematically lying about her income. Her successful online boutique was a money pit that had never turned a profit. She had been telling David she was earning a modest but steady income, while in reality, she was funding her lifestyle with more and more debt. And there was more. The investigator found that Chloe had been painting a very rosy picture of our family's finances to her relatives. She had told them that David was on the fast track to partner at his firm, that I had a vast portfolio of investments, and that my house was worth nearly double its actual market value. All of it was a lie, designed to maintain her image as a woman who had married into wealth and success. Now, as I sat in front of my laptop in the quiet of my study, I allowed myself a small, grim smile, because I had already set my trap. First, I had moved all of my liquid assets into a new series of trust accounts at a different bank. Accounts that David had no knowledge of, and that were legally protected from any claims. Then, I had worked with my lawyer to put the house into an irrevocable trust. This made it legally impossible for anyone, including David, to force a sale. But my real masterstroke was contacting Chloe's father, Richard. He was a retired, no-nonsense CEO who valued honesty and financial prudence above all else. I sent him a polite, carefully worded email, introducing myself as Chloe's concerned mother-in-law. I told him I was so thrilled about their upcoming anniversary party, and that I was hoping to make a small contribution to David and Chloe's new business venture they had mentioned. I explained that I wanted to make sure my contribution was a sound investment and asked if he could offer any advice. And then, I accidentally attached the wrong file. Instead of a file with my financial information, I attached a password-protected zip file containing scanned copies of Chloe's secret credit card statements, the letters from collection agencies, and the emails between her and her sister. The response was almost immediate. Richard emailed me back, asking for the password to the file, which I promptly provided. An hour later, my phone rang. It was him. "Mrs. Foster," he said, his voice cold as steel, "I believe you and I need to have a conversation." We spoke for over an hour. I told him everything. He was silent for a long time after I finished, but I could hear his quiet fury simmering through the phone line. The best part was, he agreed not to say a word to Chloe. He wanted to wait for the anniversary party. He wanted to confront her in person, in front of the family she had been deceiving for years. A party that would now be missing its caterer, its decorations, and the festive, successful atmosphere she had promised everyone. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was Richard. "Helen, after our conversation, my family and I have decided to arrive a day earlier than we told Chloe. We want to discuss these business matters with her privately before the celebration. We will be arriving on Friday morning. I trust this is acceptable?" Friday morning. The exact time I was scheduled to leave for my spa retreat. "Of course, Richard," I texted back. "It will be a pleasure to have you. However, I must inform you that I have a prior engagement and will be leaving that morning. Chloe and David will be there to host you." His reply was instantaneous. "Perfect. That will be for the best." I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair, a feeling of grim satisfaction washing over me. For 7 years, I had been the silent victim, the compliant mother-in-law, the invisible employee. Chloe thought she was so clever, so manipulative, but she had made a fatal error. She had underestimated the quiet woman who cleaned up her messes. She had mistaken my kindness for weakness. Tomorrow morning, while she was still dreaming of her father's investment, I would be packing my bags. Not for Oregon, as I'd told them. My real destination was a 5-star hotel and spa just 40 minutes away, where I had booked the best suite for a full week. From there, I would have a front row seat to the spectacular implosion of Chloe's kingdom of lies. I would let her family discover her deceit. I would let David finally see the truth about the woman he married. I would watch her perfectly curated world shatter into a million pieces. And the best part was, I wouldn't have to lift a single finger. Chloe had dug her own grave with years of lies and entitlement. I had simply handed her family the shovels and pointed them in the right direction. I could hear the argument in the living room finally die down. I heard their footsteps on the stairs, 2 doors closing, and then a tense silence. But I slept soundly that night. For the first time in 7 years, I slept with the peaceful smile of someone who knows that justice, no matter how long it takes, always finds a way. At 7 a.m., my alarm felt like a trumpet call to victory. I rose with a lightness I hadn't felt in years. I took a long, peaceful shower and began packing my suitcase. Each piece of clothing I folded felt like a step towards reclaiming my life. Tiffany and David were still asleep. I could hear their quiet snores from down the hall as I carried my bag downstairs. I had written a short, simple note, which I left on the kitchen island next to a set of spare keys. Decided to leave a day early for my trip. The house is all yours for the party. Have a wonderful time. Helen. What the note didn't say was that I had made a few other arrangements before leaving. I had completely emptied the pantry and the refrigerator of anything that could be used for a party. If they were going to host 40 people, they could start by learning how to shop for them. I had also locked my bedroom door, where all of my good serving platters, tablecloths, and the Christmas decorations they sometimes borrowed were stored. If Chloe wanted to impress her father, she would have to do it with her own resources. My final act of sabotage had been to cancel the weekly housekeeping service that I paid for, the service that Chloe always passed off as her own doing. Starting today, she could learn what it actually took to keep a large house guest ready. The car service arrived precisely at 8 a.m. As the driver put my luggage in the trunk, I took one last look at the house I had called home for 4 decades. A home that had become my prison, but would soon, once again, be my sanctuary. Because while I was leaving for now, this was still my house, and I fully intended to take it back. The hotel was even better than I had imagined. A sprawling suite with a view of the lake, a massive soaking tub, and the promise of absolute, uninterrupted silence. No one to call my name from another room. No one expecting me to fetch them a drink. No one assuming my time was theirs to command. My phone began to ring at 10:15 a.m. David, as expected. Mom, where are you? We saw your note. Why did you leave a day early? His voice was thick with sleep and confusion. He had likely just discovered the barren refrigerator and the fact that no one was making him his Sunday morning pancakes. Good morning, David. I just decided I needed to get a head start on my relaxation. You and Chloe have a lot to do to get ready for your party, and I didn't want to be in the way. But Mom, this is so abrupt. Chloe is... well, she's freaking out. Freaking out. Such a mild way of describing what was likely a Category 5 meltdown, at the realization that she would actually have to be responsible for her own life. I'm sure she'll be fine. She's a very resourceful woman, after all. There was a long silence on his end. I could hear Chloe's frantic voice in the background. Can you at least tell us where you are? What if there's an emergency? I'm safe and comfortable. That's all you need to be concerned about. Mom, please. I know you're upset, but this is going too far. Chloe's family arrives tomorrow, and we have nothing ready. David, I interrupted him, my voice firm. You are 35 years old. Chloe is 33. You are both capable adults. I am confident that you can solve your own problems without needing your mother to do it for you. Another long pause. Fine, he finally sighed, defeated. But promise you'll be okay. And when are you coming back? I'll be back when I'm ready. Enjoy your party. I hung up before he could argue further and immediately switched my phone to silent. I knew the rest of the day would be a relentless barrage of calls and texts. But I had waited 7 years for this peace and quiet, and I wasn't going to let them spoil it. I ordered a crab omelet from room service, something I would never have made for myself at home, because Chloe always complained about the smell of seafood. As I ate, savoring each bite, my phone screen lit up again and again with silent notifications. The real fireworks were still to come. Because tomorrow morning, just as I'd planned, Chloe's family would arrive. And they wouldn't be walking into the perfect anniversary party she had described. They would be walking into the cold, hard reality of the woman who had been living a lie for years. At 4:00 p.m., I finally glanced at my messages. There were 22 missed calls from David, 38 from Chloe, and a flood of texts that ranged from confused to pleading to furious. But the message I was waiting for had arrived from Richard an hour earlier. Helen, we will be there at 9 a.m. sharp tomorrow. Looking forward to our conversation with Chloe. Thank you again for your hospitality. Hospitality, if only he knew. By 9 a.m. Tomorrow, the only hospitality they would find was Chloe desperately trying to explain why the house was a mess, why there was no food, and why the doting, helpful mother-in-law she had bragged about had vanished into thin air. I replied to Richard, I regret that I had to leave early for a family matter. Chloe and David will be thrilled to host you. I am sure you will all have plenty to discuss. His response was immediate. I understand completely. In fact, this may be for the best. Some discussions are better had in private. Private. Exactly. A private discussion between a woman who had built a fantasy world and the family that was about to tear it down. That evening, as I enjoyed a deep tissue massage at the hotel spa, I pictured the scene that would unfold in my home the next morning. Chloe and David, waking up in a panic, making a mad dash to the grocery store, trying to create some semblance of the perfect party they had promised. And then, at 9 a.m., the doorbell would ring, announcing the arrival of the family who had come to collect on a debt of lies. I couldn't help but smile as the masseuse kneaded away the knots of tension that had lived in my shoulders for 7 years. Knots that were finally, one by one, beginning to come undone, just like Chloe's carefully constructed web of deceit. The morning of the party dawned bright and clear, and my phone began its assault early. The first call from a frantic David came at 7 a.m. I ignored it. As I enjoyed a leisurely breakfast of fresh fruit and coffee on my private balcony, I decided to listen to the voicemails. The first was from David. Mom, please, you have to call me back. Chloe is having a full-blown panic attack. We don't know what to feed 40 people. The grocery stores are packed and the caterers are all booked. Her family will be here in 2 hours. We need you. Please. The second was from Chloe, her voice ragged from crying. Helen, I know you're angry with me and I deserve it, but please don't let me be humiliated in front of my father. He flew all this way. My sister, my brother, they're all coming. I don't know how to cook for this many people. I don't know where to begin. I promise we can talk about all of this later. We'll fix it, but right now I am begging you for your help. The third message was even more desperate. Chloe again, this time sobbing uncontrollably. Helen, I just looked in the pantry. It's empty. Why is it empty? How am I supposed to feed my family? Where are all the good serving dishes? Where are the tablecloths? Please, just tell me where you put everything. That's all I'm asking. The sweet sound of reality setting in. The slow, painful realization that a household doesn't run itself, that food doesn't magically appear, that tables don't set themselves. But the message I was truly waiting for arrived at 8:45 a.m. It was a text from Richard. Helen, we are 15 minutes away. See you soon. Perfect. They were about to walk right into the eye of the storm. At 9:15, my phone rang. This time, I answered. Mom? David's voice was a strained whisper. Can you talk? Good morning, David, of course. How is your morning going? Mom, don't do this. Chloe's family is here, the whole family, and we have nothing to offer them. Chloe locked herself in the bathroom, and I don't know what to do. Have you tried explaining the situation to them? What situation? That my mother abandoned us right before the biggest party of our lives? Abandoned them. Not that he and his wife had exploited me for years, only that I had inconvenienced them. Try telling them the truth, David, that for 7 years, you both took it for granted that I would be your unpaid servant, and that I finally decided I deserved a vacation. There was a long pause. I could hear muffled but angry voices in the background. It was Richard, his deep baritone cutting through the tension, clearly demanding to know where the hostess was. Can you at least tell us what caterer you used to use? What dishes you would make? Anything that can help us? David, I didn't use a caterer. I was the caterer. I would plan menus for weeks. I would shop, prep, and cook for days. It wasn't magic. It was work. Hard work. The silence on the other end of the line told me that he was perhaps, for the very first time, beginning to grasp the sheer scale of what he had taken for granted. Look, he said, his voice smaller now. I know we messed up, but I need a solution right now. What do I do with 40 people in my living room who are expecting a party? Order pizzas, call a deli, go to the supermarket, do what normal, responsible adults do when they have guests. But it's a Saturday. Everything is swamped or requires 24-hour notice. The delis are all sold out of party platters. Then perhaps you should have thought of that before you invited 40 people without confirming with the person you expected to do all the work. I heard a new voice in the background, sharp and authoritative. Richard was clearly losing his patience. Mom, Chloe's dad wants to talk to you. He says he needs to understand what is going on. I would be happy to talk to him, but as you know, I'm on vacation. I'm sure Chloe can explain everything. She was the one who planned this whole event after all. Please, Mom, just for 5 minutes. He's very confused and getting angry. I think he can help us fix this. Help us. It was always about helping them. It was never about what I needed, what I felt, what they had done to me. David, listen to me. For 7 years, every time you needed something, I was there. Every time Chloe wanted to impress someone, I did the work. Every time you had a problem, I was your solution. Today, for the first time, you have to solve your own problems. That is not my responsibility. But it's my family! He finally yelled, his voice cracking with stress. I heard Richard's voice clearly in the background. Young man, I need to understand what's happening. Where is the woman of the house? Where is the grandmother who was supposed to be hosting this celebration? Richard had clearly been told that I was the matriarch who happily orchestrated these grand family events. And now, the matriarch was nowhere to be found. Just 2 overwhelmed adults facing the consequences of their entitlement. Mom, please, just talk to him. Tell him it was all a misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding, David. There is only a reality that you have refused to acknowledge for 7 years. And that reality is that without respect, a family cannot function. I hung up the phone. This time, I turned it off completely. It was time for the next act. I went down to the hotel's business center. It was time to send my final, most devastating volley. I sat at a computer and drafted a new email. I sent it to Richard, with Chloe's brother Mark and sister Sarah copied. Dear Richard, Mark, and Sarah, I am writing to you with a heavy heart. I deeply apologize for the chaotic situation you have walked into. I was forced to leave due to circumstances that have been building for quite some time. I believe it is important for you to understand the full truth about Chloe and David's financial situation before you consider any form of investment or assistance. The documents I previously shared with Richard are only the beginning. If you truly want to help Chloe, I urge you to have a frank and honest conversation with her about her secret debts, her misrepresentation of her and David's finances, and her unrealistic expectations of family support. Sincerely, Helen. I hit send and waited. I did not have to wait long. 15 minutes later, the phone in my hotel room rang. It was the front desk. Ma'am, I have a Mr. Richard on the line for you. He says it's an emergency. Put him through. Richard's voice was grim. Helen, thank you for taking my call. We've just read your email. I need to ask you some questions, and I need you to be brutally honest. Of course, Richard. I'm an open book. First, is it true that Chloe has expected you to cater all of her events for the past 7 years? That is correct. Every dinner party, every holiday, every birthday. I did all the planning, cooking, and cleaning. And when she told us about these wonderful parties, she was taking credit for your work? Completely. I was the invisible engine that made her social life run. There was a long, heavy pause on his end. I could hear shouting in the background. Second question, he continued, his voice tight with anger. The debts you showed me, are they real? They are. I have the original statements. I believe Chloe has been hiding them from David for years. And does she know that you know? Until today, she had no idea. I see. His voice had gone flat and cold. One final question, Helen. Why did you choose to leave right now? Because, Richard, I was tired of being treated like an unpaid employee in my own home. Your daughter informed me that I would be catering a party for 40 people without so much as asking if I was willing or able. That was the final straw. The silence that followed was long and profound. When he finally spoke, his voice was filled with a mixture of disappointment and rage. Helen, on behalf of my family, I owe you a sincere apology. It seems my daughter has been lying to us for a very long time. She painted a picture of a prosperous family where she was the masterful hostess. She asked us for a significant investment to help expand David's business, but it seems that money was intended to cover her own secret debts. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. We were fools, he said bitterly. We were ready to write a large check because we thought she had finally become a responsible adult. In reality, you were the one holding everything together while she took all the credit. Well, the truth is out now. And let me assure you, my family does not take kindly to being manipulated. Chloe is about to have a very, very difficult conversation. Richard, if I could make a suggestion, I said gently. Please, I think it would be best for Chloe to finally face the consequences of her own actions. For too long, she has lived in a world where other people cleaned up her messes. It's time for her to learn to stand on her own 2 feet. I could not agree more. In fact, the financial support she was hoping for from the family, that was entirely contingent on her demonstrating fiscal responsibility. After what you've shown us, and after seeing this disaster here today, I can guarantee you that support is gone. My lips curved into a smile. I understand. But it gets worse. My son, Mark, who was supposed to help them with some investment connections, is furious. Apparently, Chloe had asked him to look into getting an appraisal for your house. This was a new, even more shocking revelation. She did what? Yes. She told him you were considering selling it to help them buy their new condo. He spent weeks doing research on their behalf, all based on a lie. He feels like a complete fool. So do I, he sighed. Which is why my family has decided to turn this disastrous anniversary party into a family intervention. Chloe will be made to account for every lie, every dollar, and every deception. A family intervention. It was more perfect than anything I could have planned. And the other guests? They've been asked to leave. We've told them there's a family emergency. Tonight, it will just be us. And Chloe will have nowhere to hide. Does she know what's coming? Not yet, but she's about to. I could hear voices rising in the background again. Things were clearly escalating. Helen, I have to go deal with this, but I want you to know you have my deepest respect for putting up with this for so long and for having the courage to finally say, no more. Thank you, Richard. That means more than you know. One last thing. When you are ready to come home, we would be honored to meet you properly. The real Helen, not the servant my daughter pretended you were. It would be my pleasure. I hung up the phone and leaned back in my chair, a feeling of profound, quiet satisfaction washing over me. At my house, at that very moment, Chloe's world of lies was being dismantled, piece by piece, just as I had planned. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I ordered the most expensive bottle of champagne from room service, put on a classic movie, and celebrated my own independence. I knew that back at my house, the intervention was in full swing. I could almost hear the accusations, the tearful denials, the cold, hard presentation of facts. My phone vibrated with a text. It was from Sarah, Chloe's sister. Helen, could you call me when you have a moment? I need to ask you about some of these documents. I called her immediately. Helen, she said, her voice strained. I'm going through my sister's finances, and it's even worse than we imagined. It looks like she's been using David's personal information to apply for credit cards without his knowledge. That's fraud. Does David know? We just told him. He's devastated. He keeps saying there must be some mistake. Sarah, I need to ask you something. Did Chloe ever tell you that I was planning on leaving her the house in my will? There was a shocked silence on the other end. What? Yes. She told all of us that. She said you saw her as the daughter you never had. She used that promise to borrow money from several of our cousins. The depth of her deceit was staggering. She had been monetizing my future death. Sarah, I want to be perfectly clear. That is a complete and utter lie. My will leaves my house and my assets in a trust for my son and my future grandchildren. Chloe is not named anywhere in it. I figured as much, she said bitterly, but she used that lie to get over $30,000 from our relatives. $30,000, a debt that I was supposed to posthumously cover. It was diabolical. How is Chloe handling all of this? I asked. Sarah let out a humorless laugh. She's in total denial. She's claiming this is all a misunderstanding, that you're just being vindictive because you felt excluded from the party planning. Of course, even when cornered with irrefutable proof, she was still playing the victim. And the party? I asked. What party? Sarah scoffed. She ordered 30 pizzas because she had no idea what else to do. We're all sitting here in your beautiful living room, eating greasy pizza off paper plates while we conduct the most dramatic family intervention in history. The irony was exquisite. What happens now? I asked. Most of us are leaving tomorrow. This isn't the family celebration we were promised. But my father, my brother, and I are staying. We're going to make sure she understands the gravity of what she's done. All the family loans are being called due. The investment for David's business is off the table, and we're going to insist she enters credit counseling and gets a real job. It was perfect justice. And David? That's the hardest part. I think he's a good man who was blinded by love. He had no idea about any of this. He's heartbroken. My poor son. But I knew this was the only way he would ever see the truth. Sarah, there's one more thing you should know. When I return home, there are going to be some major changes. Chloe will no longer have a key to my house. There will be new rules and firm boundaries. That sounds like the best thing for everyone. It's time she learned what the real world is like. I hung up the phone and asked the driver to take me back to the hotel. Tomorrow I would make my triumphant return. The morning of May 25th dawned cool and bright. I packed my bags with a steady hand and prepared for the final act. Before I checked out of the hotel, I made a call to my lawyer, Arthur. Arthur, it's Helen. Is everything ready? Ready and waiting, Helen, he confirmed. The amendment to the trust is notarized, and the new residency agreement is drafted. I have copies of everything. Excellent. I'll see you at my house in 1 hour. Are you sure you want to do this today? Arthur, there has never been a more perfect day. It's time my family learned the true meaning of consequences. The car service dropped me off at my front door at 11:01 a.m. I used my key to open the door and stepped inside. The house was unnaturally quiet. Helen. It was David's voice, shocked and almost hopeful. Yes, David. I'm home. He emerged from the living room, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were red-rimmed and hollow. Behind him was Chloe, a pale, deflated version of her former self. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her face was scrubbed clean of makeup, and her eyes were swollen. Then came her family. Richard, looking stern and disappointed. Mark and Sarah, their faces a mixture of anger and pity. Helen, Richard said, stepping forward and extending his hand. It is an honor to finally meet you properly. We are all so deeply sorry for what you've had to endure. The honor is mine, Richard, and please don't apologize. Sometimes the truth needs a little drama to come out. Just then, the doorbell rang. It was Arthur, my lawyer, carrying his briefcase. Arthur, thank you for coming on such short notice. Please, come in. I believe everyone is here. Arthur stepped inside, his professional demeanor immediately shifting the atmosphere in the room. Good morning, he said to the group. I am Arthur Vance, Mrs. Foster's attorney. I am here to clarify some legal matters regarding this property and Mrs. Foster's estate. Chloe went even whiter, if that was possible. A lawyer? Why is there a lawyer here? Because after 7 years of being disrespected, manipulated, and financially exploited, I have decided that I require legal protection, I stated, my voice calm and clear. Protection from what? David asked, his voice trembling. From your wife's attempts to use my will as collateral for her secret loans? From her plans to have you sell my home to pay off her shopping debts? From her fraudulent use of your credit information? Shall I go on? Absolute silence. Chloe sank onto the sofa, the last bit of fight draining out of her. She finally understood that the game was over. "Arthur," I said, "if you would." "Very well," he began, opening his briefcase. "First, the Foster Family Trust. Mrs. Foster has amended the trust to include a protective covenant. This legally prohibits the sale or mortgaging of this property by any beneficiary, ensuring it remains in the family as a residence, not a financial asset." Chloe began to weep silently. David looked stunned, but also, for the first time, deeply ashamed. "Second," Arthur continued, "the terms of residency. Effective immediately, Chloe Foster no longer has unrestricted access to this property. All future visits must be by explicit, advance invitation from Mrs. Foster." "What does that mean?" David whispered. "It means your wife can no longer treat my home like her personal clubhouse. It means she can't show up unannounced, make demands on my time, or assume I am her personal chef." "Mom, I never knew." "You never knew? In 7 years, David, you never noticed that I did all the work while she took all the credit? You never wondered why your wife, who claimed to love hosting, never once cooked a meal or cleaned a dish?" David lowered his head, finally forced to confront his own willful blindness. Richard approached Chloe, his voice heavy with a father's sorrow. "Chloe, we gave you every opportunity. We gave you our trust and our support. And you used it to deceive us and to disrespect a woman who deserved only our admiration." "Daddy, I never meant to—" "You never meant to what? To lie about your finances? To commit fraud? To treat your mother-in-law like a servant?" Chloe had no reply. "There is one last thing," I said, looking directly at Chloe. "You will pay back every single dollar you borrowed from your family under false pretenses. You will write a personal letter of apology to every person you lied to. And you will learn to live within your means, not the fantasy you created at everyone else's expense." "And if she doesn't?" Sarah asked quietly. "Then she will face the legal consequences for fraud," Arthur finished, closing his briefcase with a decisive snap. I then addressed the whole room. "For 7 years I kept quiet because I thought I was keeping my family together. But I've learned an important lesson. A family that is built on lies and disrespect is not a family. It's a prison. It hurts everyone." I turned to my son. "David, I love you, but you need to decide what kind of man you want to be. A man who enables his wife's deception, or a man who insists on honesty and respect in his own home." Finally, I looked at Chloe. "And you need to decide if you want to be a responsible adult who owns her mistakes, or a spoiled child who expects the world to clean up her messes." The grandfather clock in the hall struck noon. "Now," I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face for the first time in what felt like a decade. "Those of you who would like to stay for a simple lunch, based on honesty and mutual respect, are more than welcome. Those who prefer to live in a world of fantasy and manipulation are free to leave." For the first time in 7 years, I was the one in charge of my house, my life, and my future. And I had never known a peace so profound. I hope you enjoyed my little story of taking back my life. I tell a new story every day, so be sure to follow and ring that notification bell so you don't miss tomorrow's tale. And if you'd like to hear another story about surprising twists, click on one of the videos you see on the screen now.